Hi, everyone, and welcome back to this deep dive from Global English Podcast. I'm Jordan.
And I'm Taylor.
So today we are diving into a topic that I think is it's universally relatable. I mean, for everyone.
Oh, absolutely.
Whether you're trying to finally, master the present perfect tense.
Which is a big one.
Right. Or like finish that massive report you have for work, or even just something simple like trying to establish a workout routine you actually stick with.
Exactly. And we're talking about the true sort of silent superpower behind all of that long-term success. And I'm willing to bet it's not what you think it is.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Because if you're listening to this, you're obviously committed to learning, but I bet you've felt this exact cycle.
Oh, lay it on me. I'm sure I have.
Okay, so you start on a Monday, and you are just feeling incredibly motivated, fired up. You set this huge, really impressive English learning goal for yourself.
Yep. I know this feeling. It's like I will study for 2 hours every single day.
Or I'm going to learn 50 new technical vocabulary words this week.
Yes. You go out, you buy the new notebooks, the fancy pens, you set up the perfect clean desk, and for about 2 days, you feel completely unstoppable.
Yeah.
You're just riding this like pure wave of initial motivation.
And then life happens.
Always.
Day 3 or 4 hits, you're a bit tired, the task suddenly feels really heavy, or maybe you just, hit a difficult grammar concept that just completely crushes your enthusiasm.
Ugh, yes. And then you stop.
You stop. And that start, stop, start cycle, that is probably the single greatest obstacle to fluency. Because sure, you might be putting in a lot of effort overall, but the progress is it's agonizingly slow.
And what comes after that is, for me at least, the classic failure spiral.
Tell me about it.
You internalize the stopping.
Yeah.
You start telling yourself these stories like, oh, I must be lazy, or I just don't have enough willpower.
Or the really bad one, I'm just not the kind of person who can stick with things.
Exactly. And you end up doubting your own capability, which is just such a destructive feeling to have.
But here's the entire premise of our deep dive today. The problem isn't your character, and the solution is definitely not more willpower.
Okay, so what is it?
The problem is that you are relying on the wrong fuel. We're going to show today that consistency, not motivation, not some innate talent you're born with, is the trainable biological skill that builds every other habit you want to have.
Okay, trainable biological skill. I like the sound of that.
Our mission is really to show you how to stop waiting for motivation to strike like lightning, and instead how to start building systems that actually work with your biology, not against it.
And we're going to unpack the cutting-edge science that proves action creates motivation, not the other way around.
That's the core idea. We're going to focus on a molecule that I think most people really misunderstand, dopamine.
Ah, okay.
And we'll explore some really powerful evidence-based academic strategies. They're called self-regulation strategies. And they basically allow you to build routines that are so smart and so simple that showing up every day actually becomes easy.
Ooh. And as a little teaser to keep you hooked, we're going to learn a really fascinating new English idiom later that describes that feeling when your progress, suddenly becomes noticeable out of nowhere.
And we'll also learn a concept for turning your discipline, your hard work, into a fun game.
I love that. So it's a deep dive that's going to take us from, the neural pathways in our brains all the way down to the sticky notes we leave on our computer screens.
Exactly. It's the whole system.
Love a journey like that. Okay, before we jump into the science, just a quick reminder for everyone listening, please subscribe to Global English Podcast and like this deep dive. Your support truly helps us keep making this kind of in-depth learning content.
It really does.
Okay, let's get started. Where do we begin with all this?
We begin with the foundation.
So let's start at the very, very beginning. You said a minute ago that consistency is a trainable skill, and it's rooted in our biology. I think a lot of people, including myself here, we look at these highly consistent people, and we just assume, they were born with some kind of special discipline gene.
Right, like it's a personality trait.
Yeah. So where does the scientific explanation for this actually begin?
It begins with the fundamental hardware of your brain, specifically with a concept called neuroplasticity.
Neuroplasticity. Okay, that sounds very scientific and a little bit intimidating.
It does, right? But it's actually a pretty simple idea when you break it down.
Yeah.
All it means is the brain's ability to change its own physical structure based on your experiences.
Wait. When you say my brain is changing its physical structure, that sounds massive. Do you mean Like, literally new pathways are being built when I learn English vocabulary?
Yes, on a microscopic level, that's
Right.
exactly what's happening. We're talking about the strength and the efficiency of the connections between your neurons. Those are called synapses.
Okay.
And here is the core, really powerful insight that I think should redefine how you look at consistency.
I'm ready.
Neuroplasticity is completely 100% indifferent to your desires.
What do you mean?
It doesn't care about your goals. It doesn't care about your intentions or how much you want to be fluent in English.
It sounds ruthless. So what does it care about?
It only responds to what you actually do. And, most crucially, what you do consistently, repetitively. Your brain is, at its core, an efficiency machine.
An efficiency machine.
Yes, it builds infrastructure for the actions you repeat. It doesn't waste energy on things you just think about.
So all that time I spend just thinking about doing my English homework, planning it, worrying about it, that doesn't strengthen the language circuit in my brain at all.
Not even a little bit. That's the hard truth. The neural circuits are strengthened purely by repetition. That's it.
So by the actual doing.
By the doing. When you repeatedly perform an action, let's say practicing a tricky pronunciation sound or reviewing verb conjugations or even just reading one article, you are firing a specific sequence of neurons over and over.
And that repeated firing, what does it do?
It makes those connections chemically and electrically stronger. They become faster, more efficient.
Okay, I think I need a way to visualize this. The sources used a really great analogy, the tall grass analogy. Can you walk us through that in detail?
Absolutely. It's one of my favorites because it makes it so clear. So imagine you're standing at the edge of this huge, pristine field of really tall, thick grass. And you want to get to the other side.
Great.
The very first time you walk through it, it's a massive effort.
Oh, yeah,
you
and
know?
you're fighting against the grass. You have to lift your legs really high.
Exactly. You're constantly making these conscious, very energy-intensive decisions about where to put your foot next.
That is exactly how it feels the first time I try to use the present perfect tense in a real conversation. It's so slow and awkward.
That's the perfect parallel. You're
Yeah.
thinking about every single grammatical component consciously. It's a struggle.
So what happens next?
Now, imagine you walk that exact same path every single day for a month. You don't deviate, you just repeat the route. The physical impact of your feet starts to add up. The grass gets bent down, maybe some of the roots get damaged, and the dirt underneath starts to get compressed.
Right, you should just see a little line forming.
A little line, and then eventually a clear, visible trail forms in the grass.
And that trail becomes the path of least resistance.
Exactly. Your neurons act in the exact same way. That repeated action, the walking, it compresses the mental dirt and it forms a clear, strong neural pathway.
And once that trail is there,
That trail, that strong pathway, it becomes faster to access, it requires less conscious energy to use, and eventually it becomes your brain's default setting.
wow.
That is how consistency literally creates the automatic, effortless habits that we admire so much in other people.
If consistency is literally building physical infrastructure in my brain,
Well,
wow, that puts a huge weight on my small daily choices.
it really does.
But okay, here's where my skepticism starts to kick in. Let's say I have a really strong, really old bad habit, like for instance, procrastinating on my homework. That's a very well-worn path in my brain. Can I ever truly unlearn that neural pathway?
That is a fantastic and fundamental question. The answer lies in the sort of competitive nature of your brain's architecture.
Competitive.
Oh, yeah. Neural circuits are constantly competing for energy and for real estate, and the brain practices this process called synaptic pruning,
Pruning, like when you trim a tree.
exactly like trimming a tree. Think of it as your brain being ruthlessly efficient. It's not sentimental.
Okay.
Circuits that you use frequently get reinforced, they get more resources, they occupy valuable space, but the circuits that you neglect, the ones you don't use, they begin to degrade.
So they get weaker.
They get weaker and eventually they are pruned away. The connections that aren't useful are literally dissolved to make space for the connections that are.
So if I consistently avoid a difficult English-speaking task, let's say I avoid joining a conversation group because it makes me really anxious, I'm actually strengthening the avoidance circuit through repetition.
Yes.
And at the same time, I'm allowing the potential action circuit, the speaking circuit, to be pruned away.
That is the painful biological reality of it. The avoidance pathways become dominant. They become the default setting because they require less energy to activate.
That's a little depressing.
But the good news is that the inverse is also true. If you consistently train yourself to take small, imperfect action, even just saying one single sentence out loud to yourself, you begin to weaken those old avoidance
And you
pathways.
start building the new trail.
You start building the new one. You
Yeah.
strengthen the new action-oriented pathways. You are literally, choice by choice, repetition by repetition, reshaping the architecture of your brain.
So the goal, at least at the beginning, isn't about perfect performance.
Not at all.
It's just about repeated performance. It's about logging the time on that trail, not about reaching the destination elegantly.
Absolutely. The first few times will feel clunky. They'll feel effortful. But if you just keep showing up, the brain recognizes, oh, this action is important. And it starts the process of moving it from your conscious effort system into the automatic infrastructure of habit.
And once it's automatic, consistency becomes so much easier to maintain.
That's the goal.
That concept of the brain moving an action into its default setting, that transitions us perfectly to our first key vocabulary word.
I was thinking the same thing.
We want to move from that clunky conscious effort to an automatic routine, and the perfect word for that is autopilot. Now, I know this word from airplanes, obviously, but how does it function in a conversational, everyday context?
Right. The concept comes from navigation, where a system allows an aircraft or a ship to fly without constant minute-to-minute input from the crew.
It does the work for you.
It does the work for you. And in daily life, to be on autopilot means to do something automatically, without any conscious decision, without debate, without even thinking about the steps. It's a routine of behavior that happens subconsciously.
That's so interesting because it sounds like a really positive thing. You're saving mental energy, but I can also see how it could be negative. Like when you're driving home from work and you suddenly realize you don't remember any of the trip.
Precisely. And some researchers estimate that almost half, nearly 50% of our daily behavior is performed out of habit, on autopilot.
Wow, half.
And this is crucial for our efficiency. It allows your high-level thinking brain to focus on complex problems, while all routines like walking or brushing your teeth, they just run silently in the background.
Okay, give us those core examples so we can really lock in the nuance of this word. I want to know how to use it right.
Let's start with a more formal example. This one shows a kind of mechanical, practiced routine, you could say. After years refining the processes on the production line, the technicians performed the complex assembly process on autopilot, which allowed the company to focus on quality control.
Okay, that's very clear. They're doing this high-skill work, but without that effortful, conscious thought. What about a more casual example, something we might hear every day?
Casually, you might hear something like this. I was so worried about my upcoming English presentation that I walked all the way to the wrong bus stop on autopilot.
I've done that.
Right. This shows a behavior being executed while the mind's attention is somewhere else entirely.
That's the classic disengagement example. And for a slightly funnier one, how about a weird one?
You could say, my Sunday routine has become so ingrained that when I tried to sleep in, my internal clock just put my body on autopilot, and I woke up at 6 a.m. ready to study grammar anyway.
Oh no. When your systems betray you for the sake of efficiency. I like that. Okay, let's try a quick scenario to show how this applies directly to our consistency goals.
Sounds good. I'll set the scene. The struggle of just getting started.
Deal. Okay, so
Yeah.
I used to waste at least 20 minutes, I'm not kidding, every single afternoon just arguing with myself about whether I had enough time or enough energy to do my 3 little vocabulary flashcards. It was mentally exhausting.
Yeah. But now that you've used a strategy like habit stacking, linking your vocabulary review to the 5 minutes immediately after you pour your post-lunch coffee, you just go into study autopilot.
Right.
The decision is already made. You don't have to have that negotiation every single day.
That is the whole goal of consistency, isn't it? Just
Yeah.
removing the debate entirely.
It is. And if we look at collocations, which are words that often go together, we often say things like run on autopilot, switch to autopilot, or put something on autopilot. Understanding this word really means understanding that automaticity is the end result of consistency.
Makes sense.
So now that we understand how repetition builds the actual infrastructure for consistency, those neural pathways, we need to talk about the fuel. What gets the action started in the first place?
Okay.
And this requires confronting what I think is the biggest myth in self-improvement,
Which is?
that motivation has to arrive before you can act.
That's what we all believe, right?
Yeah.
I feel like I have to feel energized and inspired before I sit down to tackle a difficult English essay. But you called motivation like Wi-Fi in the desert.
It's unreliable and it's frustrating. If you wait for that spontaneous burst of feeling, you might be waiting forever. We need to look at the chemistry that actually governs our drive, and that is dopamine.
Okay, dopamine. Most of us hear that word and we immediately think of pleasure. You know, that reward center hit we get when we finish a task or eat some junk food or scroll through social media. Is that wrong?
It's not totally wrong, but it's a very common simplified understanding. It misses dopamine's true and much more powerful function.
And what's that?
Dopamine is actually the molecule of motivation, of drive, and of pursuit.
Pursuit.
It's not primarily about the feeling of pleasure you get when you receive the reward. It's about the feeling of energy and focus that kicks in when you anticipate the reward and when you begin moving toward a goal.
So it's about the chase, not just the catch. The drive to get started is actually chemically reinforced by our brains.
Exactly. And this system is so deeply embedded in our biology. If you think about it historically, the brain needed to reinforce consistent effort toward survival things like hunting, gathering, finding shelter. These things required immense, sustained effort, often without any immediate reward in sight.
So the brain had to evolve a way to reward the effort itself.
The effort and the movement, yes.
This feels like the key insight that every single learner needs to just internalize. That our action triggers the reward chemistry. Waiting for motivation to study is a flawed strategy because it's the act of studying that actually creates the dopamine surge that makes you want to keep going.
That is the fundamental reversal of the motivation myth right there. The moment you decide to act, even the tiny physical movement of reaching for your English book or opening the app on your phone, you overcome inertia.
That's the start.
That decision and that initiation, that taps into the most powerful part of the system. Your dopamine levels begin to rise the moment you start moving toward a meaningful goal.
But what if I really dread the task? Let's say I'm trying to practice tongue twisters for my pronunciation, and I just feel silly or uncomfortable doing it. The emotional resistance is super high.
The difficulty or the resistance that you have to push through, that's where the neurochemical reinforcement actually gets even stronger.
Really?
Yes. The greater the challenge that you overcome and make even a little bit of progress on, the more meaningful that dopamine spike becomes. Your brain essentially tags that difficult action as highly valuable because it required commitment and energy.
Ah, so you earned it.
You earned that initial surge of focus and drive.
So that feeling of clarity or that little, hey, I can do this feeling that sometimes hits me right after I stop procrastinating and finally start the task. That's the neurochemical cascade starting up.
That's it. That's dopamine telling your brain, keep going. This is good. This is the right path.
You've triggered the positive feedback loop.
Precisely. And when that behavior is initiated and then sustained, over time, the brain starts to associate the effort itself with the dopamine reward.
You start to like the work.
You literally rewire your brain to crave challenge instead of avoiding it. And this is the neurological basis of persistence, of determination, of what people sometimes call grit. It's consistency shaped by chemical reinforcement.
Okay, but if I know that the anticipation is what generates the dopamine, can I engineer that? Like, can I strategically delay my reward so that the dopamine system stays activated for longer?
You absolutely can. That is getting into advanced habit building.
Ooh, okay.
Since the anticipation of the reward often produces more dopamine than the reward itself, you should focus on making the start of the task highly rewarding and the actual reward slightly delayed.
Okay, give me an example.
For example, let's say you love listening to a specific English language true crime podcast. That's the reward. You could commit to only allowing yourself to listen to it while you were completing your tedious vocabulary review, which is the difficult task.
It's called temptation bundling, right?
Yes. You bundle a high desire action with a low desire action. By linking them together, you leverage that anticipation chemistry, and it makes the entire sequence feel rewarding.
So you stop chasing this distant finish line, like fluency in 5 years, and instead you start rewarding yourself just for taking the next step today.
You act first, and you let the dopamine follow.
That realization that consistency is a system fueled by action, not waiting for motivation, that often leads to this moment where you look up and realize you've been working hard, but the results weren't obvious until suddenly, bam, they are.
A great feeling.
And this leads us beautifully into our next two idioms. Let's start with the one that describes that unexpected success. Sneaks up on you.
It's a great, slightly dramatic idiom. When something sneaks up on you, it just means that it happens slowly, quietly, and then all of a sudden it becomes highly noticeable or present.
You didn't see it coming.
You didn't see the change coming because the daily increments were just too small to perceive.
I love that. It perfectly captures that whole 1% improvement idea. You just practice the small action, and then one day, it's this big result. Let's get into the examples.
Okay, For a formal usage, one that demonstrates a large, gradual change, you could say, the gradual increase in complexity of the English reading assignments completely sneaked up on the students who were suddenly struggling to keep up with the pace of the lecture material.
Right, that shows the gradual, unnoticed pressure building up. How about a casual example, something more specific to language mastery?
Casually, you might say this. I was just doing my 5 minutes of listening practice every day, and I was thinking I wasn't getting anywhere, but suddenly the ability to understand fast native speakers just sneaked up on me.
That is so true, that ability to distinguish sounds. It's built 1 minute at a time, and then one day the whole audio just clicks into focus.
And for a slightly funnier, maybe weirder one, I thought I was just relaxing on the couch, but the need for a nap completely sneaked up on me, and I woke up 2 hours later with my textbook still open on my chest.
Oh, when the rest debt finally catches up with you. I know that feeling. Yeah. Okay, let's run a quick scenario.
Okay, I'll start by voicing that frustration of just non-stop effort with no visible results.
Go for it.
So, I've been shadowing native speakers every single morning for 6 months, trying to perfect my intonation. And I still felt like I sounded clunky and unnatural, but then my English teacher told me last week that my spoken rhythm was now indistinguishable from a native speaker's.
That's wonderful. That is exactly what happens when your progress sneaks up on you. You were too close to the process, you couldn't see the daily change, but the results accumulated until someone else noticed the total transformation.
So the consistency works even when you don't feel it working.
Exactly.
Looking at collocations, you often hear things like deadlines sneak up, progress sneaks up, or even success sneaks up. It always describes that quiet, unannounced arrival of something.
Okay, let's move to our third idiom. This one describes the exact opposite of autopilot. It describes that internal battle that just burns up all our motivation fuel. Negotiate with yourself. I know I do this daily when I'm faced with challenging tasks. What does this really mean?
It's that internal debate that so often precedes failure. To negotiate with yourself means having an internal argument, a sort of back and forth discussion in your own mind about whether you should actually follow through on a task.
And the goal of that debate is almost always to get out of it.
Almost always. The goal is usually to postpone the task or lessen the effort or just replace it with something easier.
The brain is a master defense lawyer when it comes to avoiding effort. It's always trying to convince me, oh, you can start tomorrow, or one more minute of rest won't hurt anything.
And that negotiation is so costly because it drains your cognitive resources before you even start the task.
Okay, let's look at the examples.
Formally, discussing a major internal conflict, you could say. The team leader spent the entire meeting negotiating with herself about whether to confront the difficult client immediately or wait until the project was completed.
High stakes, high internal conflict. I get that.
Yeah.
How about a simple study example?
This one might sound familiar. I spent 20 minutes negotiating with myself about whether 2 vocabulary cards counted as enough study time, and I ended up wasting the entire hour without even opening the book.
So relatable. The time you waste negotiating is often way longer than the time required for the actual task.
And finally, a funny one. The dog was constantly negotiating with himself about whether it was worth the effort to roll over for that tiny piece of cheese.
Effort versus reward, the constant calculus of life. Okay, let's run a quick scenario on how to stop this negotiation. Okay, I'm the tired student. Every single evening, I negotiate with myself to skip writing my 3 English sentences before bed. It feels like the biggest obstacle of my day.
Then, the trick, as we've learned, is to completely remove the chance to negotiate by starting the second the environmental trigger is pulled.
What do you mean?
You decide ahead of time, in a moment of high focus and clarity, that when the clock hits 9 p.m., you immediately open the notebook. You cannot negotiate with your past organized self.
It's about minimizing the gap between the intention and the action.
Exactly. When you eliminate that space, that little pause, the brain just doesn't have time to create a compelling counter-argument.
That's the key.
And for collocations, we often hear, stop negotiating, constantly negotiating, or negotiating the amount of effort or time.
That concept of negotiation leads us directly into our next big section.
Right. If the brain is constantly looking for the path of least resistance and we want to be consistent, we have to eliminate the opportunities for that negotiation. We have to make the desired action the actual path of least resistance.
And this brings us back to something you mentioned earlier, behavioral friction. You said friction is the barriers that create delay. Can you differentiate between the types of friction we face?
Absolutely. Friction is this really underestimated barrier. It can be physical, it can be cognitive, or it can be environmental, but it always creates delay and avoidance. The brain, remember, is fundamentally energy efficient.
So physical friction would be something like, my English learning materials are in a box in the closet, and I have to physically move 5 other things just to reach it.
That is a perfect example of physical friction. It's the literal physical effort required to start. But even more insidious, I think, is cognitive friction.
And what's that?
This is the mental effort. It's the number of decisions your brain has to make before the task even begins. If you sit down to study and you have to decide, what topic should I study today? Which app should I open? Wait, where are my notes? That is massive cognitive friction.
And the brain, seeing that high friction, just mass.
Yeah.
It defaults to the easiest path, which is usually checking social media or doing anything else. It's a systems problem.
It's a total systems problem. The friction is enough to derail the study intention because the brain interprets that delay as a signal that the task isn't urgent or rewarding. So the key strategies from the research all focus on reducing both of those friction types.
Okay, so what are the key strategies the research points to for tackling this resistance?
First and foremost, environmental structuring. You have to design your environment to support the desired behavior. This reduces physical friction.
How so?
The sources strongly advocate for setting up a dedicated English zone, even if it's just one corner of your desk that's always clean and ready. But crucially, they recommend preparing the night before.
Preparing the night before sounds like such a simple hack. I mean, how big of a difference does that really make?
It is huge. It's huge because it eliminates the need for mental effort during your moment of lowest willpower, which for most people is either first thing in the morning or late in the evening.
So, for example,
If you want to practice listening while you have your morning tea, then have the headphones, the charger, and the specific podcast episode already loaded and ready to play before you even go to sleep.
that makes the start completely seamless.
Okay.
And that reduces the, what was it, the activation threshold.
Correct. Every action has a point where the brain switches from just thinking about it to actually doing it. High-friction tasks raise that threshold, making action less likely. By structuring your environment and preparing ahead, you lower that threshold. You make the action feel simple and automatic to start.
And the ultimate low-friction start is the one-touch rule.
Yes. The behavior should be so simple, it only requires a single step to get started. Do not allow your non-negotiable habit to involve more than one touch.
Give me an example of that.
Don't commit to opening the book, finding the right page, and then reading. Just commit to press play on the audio that's already queued up, or open the notebook to the page that's already marked with a bookmark.
Because once that single step is initiated, momentum takes over.
And that dopamine starts flowing.
We also have to talk about digital friction, which I think is the bane of online learning. How do we reduce the cognitive load that's imposed by our devices?
Digital friction is cognitive friction's very modern, very annoying cousin. If your computer screen is filled with browser tabs and you have email icons flashing and phone notifications popping up, your brain is constantly forced into a reactive mode.
It can't focus.
It cannot deeply focus when it's juggling all those competing stimuli. So reducing digital friction means being ruthless about eliminating distractions. Close all unnecessary tabs. Use full-screen reading modes. Maybe even use distraction-blocking software during your dedicated study window.
These strategies, environmental structuring, the one-touch rule, they sound incredibly practical. Are they actually supported by the academic research on successful learning?
They are directly aligned with core evidence-based self-regulation strategies, or SRLs, and systematic reviews confirm that these strategies lead to higher success rates and better outcomes for online English learners.
That's powerful. Can we break down the most critical SRL strategies that were identified in the research?
We can break them down into 3 primary categories. The first is time management, which was highly cited in the systematic reviews. This involves scheduling your learning activities at the same time each day. It's a practice we often call time blocking.
And time blocking provides that predictable rhythm you mentioned earlier. It removes the daily need for a decision.
Exactly. The brain absolutely thrives on rhythm. When 7 p.m. is always English reading time, that habit becomes anchored. The second critical category is task strategy. This is where we implement routines like habit stacking, which was mentioned in 7 of the key studies.
Okay, let's get really tactical on habit stacking. How can a listener stack a new English practice onto an existing habit, beyond just the simple examples?
Let's use a detailed 3-step stack for a morning routine. You already have the existing established habits of 1, making coffee, and 2, waiting for the coffee to brew.
Right, everyone does that.
You're going to attach a new English practice to step 2, the waiting part.
Okay, what's the detailed, specific new practice?
So the new practice is, when the water starts boiling, that's habit A, I will immediately open my audio app and select a short 5-minute news clip. That's new habit 1.
Okay.
While the coffee is brewing, that's habit B, I will listen to that clip twice, new habit 2. As I pour the coffee into my mug, I will repeat one difficult sentence from the clip out loud, focusing on my intonation, new habit 3.
That's brilliant because it completely removes the decision fatigue. You don't have to decide what to study or when to study. The coffee maker is the trigger.
The existing habit acts as the cue, and that connection is strengthened every single day.
Okay, what was the third one?
The third, and perhaps the most enjoyable SRL strategy, is gamification. This was cited in 3 of the studies, and it's what we call gamifying your discipline.
Turning the work into a reward system.
Yeah.
How does the research suggest we gamify our tasks effectively?
Gamification just means turning tasks into games. You can do this by tracking streaks, setting micro rules, or earning points. The most effective implementation is often through those micro rules.
Like what?
For example, setting a clear, immediate reward structure. Like, I cannot watch the next episode of my favorite show until I successfully write 10 error-free sentences.
So the rule forces the action, and the reward reinforces the difficult behavior, which aligns perfectly with what we learned about dopamine and the positive feedback loop.
Yes. The system makes the discipline feel more like a winnable challenge than some burdensome duty. When you strategically implement time management, habit stacking, and gamification, you are actively creating this biological and environmental system where consistency isn't about some mysterious mythical willpower. It's just about a smart, low-friction routine.
All these sophisticated strategies for reducing friction and leveraging dopamine seem to lead to one crucial principle. You have to avoid big, heavy goals.
Yes.
And this brings us directly to the concept of the 1% rule.
Big goals fail because they are too heavy. They demand too much energy, and the result is way too far away. The brain looks at a goal like become fluent in 6 months or study for 2 hours daily, and it immediately triggers avoidance and negotiation because it equates that huge energy cost with a threat.
And the 1% rule is the antidote to that pressure. It means improving just a tiny amount every day. But how does improving by just 1% actually translate into meaningful progress long term? It sounds so insignificant on any given day.
That's where the beautiful math of exponential growth comes in. The change feels negligible in the moment, but it compounds massively over time. Let's just look at the numbers.
Okay.
Let's say you commit to learning just 5 new English words a day. That's a tiny, manageable goal that takes minimal effort.
5 words. Okay, let's assume I actually do that consistently.
In just 1 month, that's 150 new words added to your functional vocabulary. By the end of a single year, you have accumulated 1,800 words. All from maintaining that lightweight daily habit. That's a monumental gain. And it was all achieved without the pressure of a 2-hour daily study goal.
That reframes the entire mindset. It moves from I have to be perfect right now to just I need to take one tiny small step today. But here is the genuine skepticism that I often hear and feel myself. If I only commit to 5 minutes or 1 sentence, aren't I just giving myself an easy out? How do I stop that minimum from becoming my maximum?
That is a critical challenge. And the answer is that the non-negotiable minimum is not designed for your best days. It is designed for your worst days.
So that brings us to the non-negotiable minimum.
Exactly. This is the concept of setting a bare minimum essential habit that is so small and so easy that your brain cannot possibly reject it, even when you are sick or stressed or completely exhausted.
Give us the smallest possible non-negotiable minimum you can think of for an English learner.
It could be listening to just 120 seconds of English audio while you're waiting for the kettle to boil.
2 minutes.
Or reading just 1 sentence out loud before you turn off the light at night. The key is to make it friction-free and almost insulting in its simplicity.
So the goal isn't massive progress on that terrible day. What is the real deeper purpose of it?
The purpose is twofold. First, you're protecting the consistency streak. But more importantly, you're sending the correct mental message. Consistency does not demand 100% effort daily. It demands that you refuse to disappear entirely.
I see.
Even doing that tiny 2-minute minimum keeps the mental pathway alive. It sends a powerful message to your brain. I am a learner who shows up.
I think that shift in self-talk is so necessary. It's not, I'm quitting. It's, I'm adjusting the scope of the mission for today.
That is the entire game. I remember this one high-stress project I was working on last year. I had committed to writing 1,000 words a day, but for 2 weeks, I was swamped, totally exhausted, and just hitting the wall every single day.
What did you do?
I dropped my goal. I dropped it down to just writing the title in the first sentence.
Just the title in the first sentence.
Yes, it took me 30 seconds. The creative outcome for those 2 weeks was negligible, but I maintained the streak. I preserved the neural pathway. I kept the flame alive, even if it was just a tiny spark.
So when the stress finally lifted,
I returned easily to the 1,000-word goal because I had never negotiated away my identity as a writer. The non-negotiable minimum preserves the habit above all else.
that makes perfect sense.
And this idea of identity brings us to the final and most powerful piece of the puzzle.
Okay.
We've covered the biology of repetition, the chemistry of action, and the strategy of smallness. But for consistency to really endure over the long term, it has to move beyond just external routines. It has to integrate into who you believe you are. And this is the identity shift.
I know that relying on temporary external motivation like a looming test date or a specific reward, it always fails for me because eventually it conflicts with these deep-seated negative beliefs I might hold about myself. You know, like being unorganized or bad at languages.
That conflict is the breaking point. Long-term consistency requires you to become someone new, not just do something new temporarily.
Why is that?
It's governed by a principle called cognitive consistency. Your brain has these systems designed to maintain coherence between your actions and your self-image. And if your actions contradict your identity almost always wins.
So if my unconscious self-image is, I am a person who starts things but never finishes them, then my actions will subtly filter through that lens, and they'll push me to confirm that belief by stopping my English practice.
Precisely. The brain prioritizes coherence over your success. The necessary shift, then, involves redefining that internal narrative entirely. You have to stop using effortful language.
What do you mean by that?
You stop saying, I'm trying to learn English, or I hope to be fluent someday, and you start believing, I am an English speaker who shows up and is improving every day.
Wow, okay. I feel a huge difference just in the language of those two statements.
Yeah.
The second one is so much less draining and way more empowering.
And the result of that shift is profound. Because when a challenge arrives, a difficult morning, a missed practice session, a confusing grammar rule, it simply doesn't fit the narrative of who you are anymore.
The challenge is now inconsistent with my identity as an improving speaker.
Which means it's easier to show up, because skipping practice would cause this severe internal conflict with the person I now believe myself to be.
Right, and this is identity-based reinforcement.
Exactly. Every small action you take, every 5-minute study session, every single sentence you write is another piece of evidence that supports your new identity.
So the more evidence you accumulate.
The more stable the identity becomes. You're no longer trying to be disciplined, you simply are disciplined. The effort becomes part of your default setting, your autopilot.
So how does this identity shift, which sounds very psychological, actually affect my learning outcomes in the real world?
It directly ties back to confidence, specifically to something called self-efficacy.
Oh, okay. What's that?
Self-efficacy is just the belief in your own capability to successfully achieve certain tasks or goals. And the systematic reviews in the field of online learning show that students with higher self-efficacy are significantly more motivated to use all those SRL strategies we talked about.
Like time blocking and gamification.
And consequently, they achieve significantly better outcomes.
So by reinforcing the identity of, I am a consistent learner, I dramatically boost my confidence, which then makes me more likely to implement the smart routines that lead to real-world results. It's a beautifully closed loop.
It is. The transformation isn't in the size of the task. It's in the definition of the self that carries out the task.
Okay, so I've established my non-negotiable minimum of 10 minutes of English practice a day. I missed Tuesday. I had a massive emergency at work, didn't get home until midnight. So my immediate thought is, I failed my habit. I am a failure at consistency. I'll just start again next month when things calm down. Can I say that, and is that the logical conclusion?
That is the exact destructive internal dialogue that we need to dismantle. That is classic all-or-nothing thinking, and it is the absolute killer of consistency. You have to break that cycle of linking one missed day to a complete character failure.
So how would a consistent learner, someone armed with a growth mindset, correctly articulate that situation without shaming themselves.
They would acknowledge the reality, but without the judgment. They might say, okay, I missed one day, but I'm implementing the 2-day rule and I am coming back tomorrow.
The 2-day rule. Never miss twice in a row.
Exactly. Or, using the wisdom of the bare minimum, they might say, I'm not failing, I'm adjusting the workload to reflect my current stress level.
That puts the focus not on yesterday's mistake, but on today's action.
Precisely. The key learning here is that consistency is not built through perfection, because perfection is completely unattainable. It's built through self-compassion and the speed of your return after you fall.
So you just acknowledge the rest was needed.
The rest was needed, but the commitment is not broken. You just pick up where you left off, even if you only do your tiny, non-negotiable minimum the next day. This removes the shame, it eliminates the negotiation, and it preserves your new identity as someone who always shows up.
That's a powerful reframe.
So we've covered the deep science of habit formation, the chemistry of motivation, and unlocked some powerful English phrases today. I think it's time for a quick pop quiz to see what has stuck with you and with everyone listening.
Lay it on me. I'm ready to test my new autopilot settings.
Excellent. Okay, question number 1. What is the word we use today for doing a task automatically, without conscious decision or debate, often because the neural circuits are so strong?
That would be autopilot. It's the goal state we reach through consistent repetition.
Spot on. Question number 2. What is the term for that mental process of having an internal argument, where you attempt to postpone a difficult task or lessen the effort required?
That is, negotiate with yourself. And the key strategy is to remove the window for that negotiation by just starting the action immediately.
Fantastic. And finally, question number 3. Which key molecule central to the brain's drive and motivation system is released primarily in response to action and anticipation, proving that you must start before you feel motivated?
That is dopamine. And we learned it's the molecule of pursuit, not just of pleasure. The action triggers the dopamine, making us want to keep going.
Perfect scores. You and the listener have definitely been absorbing the strategies today. So to summarize the 3 most important words and concepts we learned today.
First, we learned all about setting up the system for autopilot, using consistency to make an action automatic and friction-free, removing the need for daily willpower.
Second, we mastered the bare minimum or the 1% rule, the strategic importance of setting a tiny non-negotiable step that protects your habit streak on bad days, ensuring you never disappear entirely.
And third, the ultimate long-term driver, the identity shift, moving your internal self-talk from "I am trying to learn" to "I am an English speaker who shows up every single day."
That holistic change, rooted in biology and actionable strategies, is how you ensure sustainable, long-term success.
Okay, so our micro-challenge for you, the listener, is simple. Identify your non-negotiable 5-minute English habit for tomorrow. Make it so small your brain cannot possibly reject it. Then use one of our new words, autopilot, sneaks up on you, or negotiate with yourself in a comment below to declare your intention. Show up for yourself.
And trust the process, because your progress is absolutely going to sneak up on you.
Don't forget to like and subscribe to Global English Podcast.
I'm Taylor. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.
I'm Jordan. See you next time.